Hi, I'm Eddie Obeng, and this is How. Daily, I bring you a different tool, a method to help you navigate and create a world which you want to live in. Today, I've got a special treat for you. It's called Future Mapping. It's really how you make sure the future evolves the way you want it to without any surprises. So let's jump on Cube and see what we can find with our future map. So this is a diagram from the Quick Meet cubicle. It lists all the pets people use all the time. Pets, people engagement tools. You'll be familiar by now with hopes and fears, here to there, and so on. And in this particular cubicle, they're all down here in the library. And you can easily view them privately, have a look at them, or actually take some time and drag them onto a screen and onto a whiteboard and see what you do with them. So it's really very useful here to have these pets available. But this Quick Meet cubicle loads really quickly. It's a great place to be. You can work with your colleagues. Has everything you need, tells you how to run drum beats and everything else. So let's jump on and let's have a look at this future map. So I want to start with something which I remember from when I was doing my MBA. And there was a long conversation about demographics and the impact of demographics on the economy. And the tutor we had at the time, let me scribble and see what it works on. Yeah, the tutor we had at the time was explaining how what you do when you're trying to run the world is you spend your time thinking about how you could come on, just come a bit closer. There you go, that's better. Okay, you spend your time thinking about how you can plan for the future if you're a government. And he told us about these things called these demographic charts. And it's got a middle bit there. And on that side there, they write M. On that side there, they write F. And that's an F. And then along here, they'll write something like 0, 150. And then they make a chart on this side of the age profile of the people in the country. Okay, male and then female, whatever it is. Okay, and they do that. And the assumption was that next year, you could basically tell what was going to happen, because all that would happen is everything would shift up by 1 year. And so you got a sense of what was going on. But you could see there's a great big gap here. You know, in 10 years' time, we're going to have a problem and so on. So they were using the fact people get 1 year older every year, and we all do that unless we unfortunately die, as a way of predicting the future. That was the inspiration for something I call the future mapping cones. Why? Because we know some really strange things. How did we get here? Why are you watching this particular quick vid? The reason you're watching it is because it's the most likely, most inevitable thing for you to do. Basically, the present is the most probable route out of the past. So the reason you're here, something happened which brought you here. The most likely thing always happens. Okay, and it works that way going into the future and going back into the past. You always live in the most probable future. So if you extend from the past to where you are, there are some things which are going to be inevitable. And that was what he was trying to explain with the demographics. Pretty near inevitable. There are some things which are likely because you can see them starting to emerge. And there are some things which are possible because you can see bits might come together. And then there are less likely things. So what you tend to do in my world is, if you want to understand the future, you capture the events and outcomes which are emerging. The reason that's called number 2 is because that's what it's saying, brainstorm emerging events. Then once you've captured them all, so I think that AI is going to take over the world. Lots of people say that. Is that inevitable? I would put it as probably possible. But one thing which is inevitable is tomorrow we're going to have to eat. Okay, so that would go here. So one of the things which you do is you start to sort and discuss with your colleagues what's more likely, what's possible, and what's inevitable. If you're serious about being successful, you put a lot of effort into the inevitable things so they work for you. You put some effort into the possible things. And if the likely things are part of your strategy, it tells you have to make them more probable. So that's what future mapping cones does. It guides you to put energy to make things more likely. And then there's another tool, the map. The map tells you how the future will unfold. I've got a story which I stole from the BBC about 10 years ago. I was quite shocked by it. It was a story about thousands of women being rescued, having been kidnapped in China. And this was something called the Bare Branches. And they showed this mother whose 20-year-old son had to leave the village after many, many years. She was really sad. And this son is what's called a bare branch. What's a bare branch? A bare branch is one which can never bear fruit, okay? And future mapping is basically a way to build a strategy which works both now and in the future. It's really straightforward. You just have to understand the inevitable, the things which are possible, the things which are likely, and then manipulate the probabilities. So let's have a look. So the problem they had in China was they were growing the economic benefits, but the number of people was growing faster than the benefits. So they thought, we can find a way to grow even faster. We can abandon the vision of development. We can reduce population growth. They went for number C. So they went, okay, we're going to reduce population growth because that's a possible thing we can do. And so the strategic event was to pass laws which said you can only have one child. Net result of that was the government had said, I've limited the number of children to one. That's what the actual action is. The background to that is that sons who work hard in that culture can work in the fields. After marriage, the girl tends to join the family of the groom. So that was the culture in there. So the net effect of that is tradition says boys are going to be more valuable. Hi, Tammy. I'm in the middle of a podcast. I'm going to have to jump out. Okay. And so couples who had a girl would try for a boy traditionally. So this one-child policy would only work if it was a boy. And then you end up with the availability of ultrasound, so people could tell whether it's going to be a boy or a girl. So unfortunately, lots of abortion for the girl children because they're only going to want one child, so they're going for the boys. So there are 2 times as many boys being born as girls. The boys had to leave the village because there's no possibility. They've got to earn money so they can afford the few expensive girls. And then it just goes on. You can see the mass migration, 18 million people crossing the country and so on and so forth. And I've tried to map out here in the dark red, the really undesirable stuff, and in the light red, bright red, the stuff which is unexpected. So when they issued this policy, they weren't expecting kidnapping because they hadn't mapped the future. If you map the future, it's easy to see what's coming. Okay, so if you map the future and you've thought about it, you've got this map. Now what do you do about it? There are actions you can take. They're amplifying actions and they're neutralizing actions. So actually what happened in real life was that they started punishing people who had a second child, which is great, but that just pushed up the number of abortions. So they had to bring in a law to register every pregnancy, which is great, but it didn't fix the whole problem. So what they had to do is create another new law. So what happens if you allow these unexpected events to happen? You chase after them. But if you've mapped it in future, map the future before you get there, you can actually decide what you're going to do. And you can actually put in the actions well before anything happens so that you get to a result which you actually want. And so that really is the story of the future mapping. And you'll go, oh, what's that got to do with anything? Well, it's got to do with your life because you can do exactly the same thing. You know what the background is to your world. You know what decisions you're taking, either as an individual, as a company, as a project, and you can just map them. Things which are happening now, things which are happening soon, things which will happen later. And you can just map them all out, We'll do that. What will our competitors do? What's the outcome going to be? The arrow always flows in the direction of the activity. And if there's a line across it, it's one of these things where because 2 things have happened, something specific happens. So that's a future map. If you use that, your life becomes more predictable and your future contains fewer unexpected outcomes. And you're going to have a great time. Subscribe, bring your colleagues to subscribe so you can all have a great future. Look for the quick link.